This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's December 9th, 2024, the birthday of traffic lights. That's right. On this day in 1868, the world's first traffic signals went into service in London, England. The light part of it was more of an accessory feature than anything. The actual signal consisted of a pair of signs attached to pivoting arms that were manipulated by a lever. The post that held those arms was topped with a gas semaphore lamp to make the whole assembly more visible. But after a couple of months, the lamp exploded. It was actually so severe that it killed the police officer who was there to manually move the arms. And it was another 46 years before the first electric red and green traffic light was installed in Cleveland. And the yellow light was added in 1920 in lights that were used first in New York and Detroit. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Traffic signals initially evolved in very visible ways that anyone traveling through an intersection would be able to notice. The exterior form, though, has been pretty well settled for a while. But advances are still being made. And in fact, one feature of the transit plan that Nashville voters approved in November is a revamp of hundreds of this city's traffic signals. It's a part of the plan that we tend to gloss over in favor of talking about bus rapid transit and more sidewalks. But those big, obvious pieces can't work to their best if the system of signals isn't properly aligned with them. Most of the changes to signals will happen in the way they're programmed. The plan puts it like this. An upgraded signal network will essentially function like a home with a high-end smart thermostat. A system of sensors and computers will manage congestion and time traffic lights to reduce bottlenecks. It's also a key piece of creating rapid bus lines that share the same roads with everyone's cars, trucks, and bikes. The network will know where the buses are and switch signals in ways that prioritize their quick movement through intersections. And once you've got that equipment in place, it can also be used to assist emergency vehicles so that first responders can get where they need to be ASAP. Now, this type of tech is already in use to a degree, but nowhere near what's to come. It's worth noting that a group that opposed the transit referendum has now filed a lawsuit that takes issue with traffic signals being part of it. They're arguing that the state law that allowed Nashville's ballot measure has a more narrow definition of mass transit systems. But that's not stopping Metro from taking steps forward. One group of Nashvillians will feel the changes in a more direct and obvious way. The plan includes investments for pedestrian signals, the walk and don't walk signs, so that people with disabilities will find them more helpful and easy to use. And remember, one of the key concepts of this plan is that pedestrian improvements are a necessary part of making transit better because walking is one kind of transportation and because people riding buses need to be able to walk safely to and from the bus stops. That's central to the mindset of this plan and an aspect that the lawsuit calls into question. In all, the plan as written calls for 592 new or upgraded traffic signals, from smarter red lights to more accessible crossing signals. In just a few minutes, small towns in West Tennessee are growing more diverse and working to reckon with generations of difficult racial history. That's coming up after the newscast.
On This is Nashville, we're taking a journey into the identity of this place we call home. The old and the new, the glitzy and the gritty, the monumental and the human. What makes Nashville tick? What makes it unique? And where are we headed as a city? We're going deeper on the day's news, bringing you dynamic conversations and taking you with us out into the community. Join us weekdays at noon. This is Nashville.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Today marks 1 year since a deadly tornado outbreak hit Middle Tennessee, destroying homes and downing power lines. Recovery for hard-hit areas is still ongoing. Federal disaster relief money totaled nearly $15 million and was distributed to 2,600 homes, hundreds of which were destroyed by the 2023 tornadoes. President Joe Biden has expanded the money available to Tennessee families recovering from the damage of Tropical Storm Helene this fall. The approved increase is for debris removal and emergency protective measures. In addition, recovery centers will be opening in East Tennessee for affected farmers to discuss what resources are available to support agricultural recovery in the aftermath of Helene. Metro Nashville police have escalated the search for a driver who killed a pedestrian on Interstate 40 early Tuesday morning. The homicide unit is now involved. The victim has been identified as 22-year-old Austin S. David of Mount Juliet. Traffic was blocked for hours in the eastbound lanes near Nashville International Airport. Police say David was walking along the right side of I-40 East when he was first struck around 2 a.m. before being run over by other vehicles. News Channel 5 reports that David's mother says her son was traveling home from Nashville with a friend when there was an argument. She believes her son was either dropped off or forced from the vehicle near the interstate. Police have found a vehicle they think is related to the incident. They ask that anyone with information about the crash call Crime Stoppers. The Tennessee Valley Authority has been burning coal for over 80 years, and all that burning left a lot of toxic stuff, millions of tons of coal ash. One of these mountains of residue is located on the Tennessee River near Waverly. WPLN's Caroline Eggers says the utility recently announced plans to clean it up.
Coal ash contains arsenic, cobalt, and other pollutants linked to cancer and disease. And for decades, TVA dumped it in unlined ponds and pits, contaminating nearby land and water. TVA has faced multiple lawsuits regarding its handling of coal ash, and the state of Tennessee ordered the utility to create site-specific plans back in 2015. TVA now says it will create a plan for the new Johnsonville site. The utility may build an on-site landfill, move it to a reprocessing facility, or truck it to another landfill, like it's doing in Memphis right now.
TVA faces both state and federal orders to manage its coal ash. Earlier this year, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency finalized a rule that requires utilities to clean up unlined coal ash pits. The new Johnsonville site near Waverly is subject to this new rule. Nashville-based HCA Healthcare continues to dominate as the largest health system in the country. That's according to a recent report by Becker's Hospital Review. This specific report looked at bed counts for 2023. Across the country, HCA facilities operate more than 37,000 staffed beds. That's more than double the count for the next largest system. This footprint makes HCA a massive company in terms of money. The health policy nonprofit Kaiser Family Foundation reports revenues were higher at HCA in 2023 than at some of the country's most well-known corporations, including Netflix, Uber, and Starbucks. That same report notes that hospital consolidation, where a big company like HCA buys a bunch of smaller hospitals, has benefits, like giving the hospitals more negotiating power for supply prices. But critics say that it means less competition, leading to higher bills for patients. Another Tennessee company, Community Health Systems, spent years as the nation's largest hospital chain, but it has been downsizing. In this report, the system came in at 9th, with a few more than 9,000 beds. Nashville home sales this past month were up 7% compared to the same month a year ago. The total number of homes in the Nashville area rose by more than 1,000 year over year, with the majority of residential properties. The median price for a home in the city currently stands at $500,000. Downtown Presbyterian Church just celebrated the 100th anniversary of Waffle Shop, one of the longest-running fundraisers in Nashville. The church was a Union hospital during the Civil War and has been on both the right and wrong side of civil rights. Historian Jim Hubler says he values what we can learn from the location's more than 200 years of history.
Places evolve, people evolve. For example, in the 1950s with sit-ins, John Lewis tried to come into the church and was denied access. But in the 1990s, when the National Trust for Historic Preservation had their closing plenary session in the church, he stood at the pulpit and said, "It's good to know I'm welcome now." So people evolve and places evolve.
Today, the church plays host to a small, active congregation as well as nonprofits and artists, and the building itself is one of the best remaining examples of Egyptian revival architecture. You can learn more about Downtown Presbyterian Church at thisisnashville.org and dpchurch.com. As the holidays approach, Nashville police are preparing to handle an influx of drunk drivers on the road. Beginning next week, Metro Nashville Police will have a sobriety checkpoint on 8th Avenue South near its Midtown Hills precinct. The checkpoint will be operational from 9 p.m. onwards. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. One misperception about rural America is its racial makeup. The Brookings Institution finds the share of people of color living in rural areas has increased from 1/5 to about 1/4 this decade. As this diversity increases, some small towns are working to improve racial understanding. In Northwest Tennessee, the Weekly County Reconciliation Project is one group. Reporter Laura Cabetti-Chemesney with WKNO and the Institute for Public Service Reporting in Memphis introduces us to their work.
As Joyce Washington begins a virtual call with 6 attendees from the Weekly County Reconciliation Project, they all close their eyes.
Take a couple of deep breaths. Just allow yourself to sit in all that love and peace and compassion.
They're about to dive into an hour-plus conversation about the book Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt. One chapter debunks a pseudoscience myth that for centuries claimed white bodies were physically superior. It's an intense, emotional topic that merits a moment of meditation.
Just allow yourself to be as you slowly open your eyes and we return to our shared space.
The monthly ritual before each meeting helps set the tone for deep listening and accepting each other, even if they disagree. Washington lives in Martin, in Northwest Tennessee, and is one of the founders of the Weekly County Reconciliation Project, which began in 2018.
It's about working through the pain. It's not about pushing the pain down. It's not about ignoring the pain. It's about being able to open your heart and accept what is and was, and then be willing to say, okay, how do we move forward and be better?
85% of Weekly County's population of 33,000 is white, according to census data. Black people make up 8%, with other races at 3 or less. In addition to the book group, the Weekly County Reconciliation Project holds monthly community meetings. Members share experiences with race and learn about America's past to move toward racial healing. For some Black members of the group, like Robert Nunley, who grew up in the area, it was hard to shift his view of the region. To his mind, it felt stuck in the 1960s, when he and others were among the first to integrate local schools. To him, healing has to be deliberate.
And if it's not facilitated, if you don't have people being intentional in small communities and larger communities, there's a price to pay for that.
And then there are white members of the group. Linda Ramsey is 74 and from neighboring Obion County. Growing up, none of her family members ever talked about the civil rights movement unfolding all around them. She still gets emotional remembering how her grandmother put a stop to her friendship with a Black girl when she was 11.
And I never got to be with Juanita again. And it just broke my heart. And I don't think today even folks realize how people of my age were uneducated about so many things. I didn't know about Juneteenth till about 3 years ago. I never heard of it.
There are still obstacles, though. When the group tried to memorialize a lynching victim in Weekly County's town of Greenfield, they met resistance. Washington said that Black residents were reluctant to dredge up the past, fearing white residents would oppose the memorial. Their livelihoods depend on them.
And they are not willing to push back, because pushing back creates problems that most of them don't want to have to deal with.
Race and labor historian Melinda Metter attributes the unwillingness to a geographic divide, a difference between town and country. Her family has farmed in Weekly County for generations. She says grassroots efforts to bridge divides need to have leaders county-wide, not just in towns like Martin, the biggest in the area.
There is a social class structure here that people don't acknowledge. People still look down on farmers,
Metter has researched the area's racial violence in historical archives. She found 41 lynchings had occurred in the region in the 50 years after the Civil War.
People seemed to simply believe they had the right to take the law into their own hands, period. And they did it freely.
Even if some change at home is challenging, members continue to study the broader story of racial terror in America. Last fall, they traveled to Montgomery, Alabama to visit the Equal Justice Initiative's Legacy Museum and National Memorial for Peace and Justice. Several students from UT Martin, including sophomore Madison Jones, joined them. She said the trip cemented her desire to become a lawyer and to fight the racial discrimination she has faced.
This is all about the history of racism and how I can be an impact on the justice system, and that even though that's the past, I can be the future.
And to Washington, healing wounds of the past so that the future can be better is what the Weekly County Reconciliation Project is all about.
This work is not for the faint of heart. I think what's important is to remain visible and consistent. And you have to not get discouraged. And it's easy to do in this work.
For WKNO, the Institute for Public Service Reporting and Report for America, I'm Laura Cabetta-Chimesi.
And thanks so much to our colleagues in Memphis for sharing that story with us. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.